The village of Arendelle always smelled of smoke in the mornings, not the comforting smoke of hearth fires or baking bread, but something sharper, something that carried the weight of fear across every thatched roof and dirt road. Serene stood in the center of the town square, watching the crowd gather. 22 years of silence had taught her to read faces the way others read words. The baker's wife clutched her daughter's hand too tightly. The blacksmith wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. Old Petra from the healing house had tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. They all knew what today was. The choosing. Every year, Arendelle offered a virgin to the Dragon King, a sacrifice to maintain the fragile peace between their people and the creatures that ruled the skies. The ritual was older than anyone living could remember, passed down through generations like a curse that could never be broken. General Corvus stood on the platform that had been erected overnight, his military uniform immaculate despite the early hour. He was a tall man with sharp features and eyes the color of winter storms. His voice carried across the square with practiced authority. "The treaty demands tribute," he announced. "One unmarried woman between the ages of 12 and 25. The Dragon King's price for allowing us to live in peace." Peace. Seren's hands curled into fists at her sides. If this was peace, she wondered what war looked like. Her brother Declan stood beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. At 25, he was only 3 years older than her, but the lines around his eyes made him look decades older. Raising a mute sister alone after their parents' brutal murder 16 years ago had carved its marks into him. "Don't," he whispered, his voice so low only she could hear. "Seren, don't even think about it." But she was thinking about it. She had been thinking about it since last night, when Corvus's soldiers had come to the orphanage and chosen Leora, a 12-year-old girl with copper hair and freckles across her nose, a child who still played with cloth dolls and helped the healer gather herbs in the forest. Leora stood on the platform now, trembling. Her mother sobbed somewhere in the crowd. Her father had his face buried in his hands. Corvus continued speaking, listing the terms of the treaty, the necessity of the sacrifice, the honor of being chosen. Empty words to dress up murder in finery. Seren stepped forward. Declan's hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. "No." She turned to look at him, meeting his eyes. Her brother's face was already wet with tears. He knew her too well, knew exactly what she was about to do. "Please," he said, "not you. Anyone but you." She pulled her wrist free gently and kept walking. The crowd parted around her like water around stone. Whispers followed in her wake. She could feel every eye on her back as she climbed the wooden steps to the platform. Corvus turned to her, one eyebrow raised. "Seren of no family, what is your purpose here?" She pointed to Leora, then to herself. The gesture was clear, even without words. "You wish to volunteer in her place?" Corvus's lips curved into something that might have been a smile on a kinder face. "How noble." Seren nodded once. "The treaty specifies an unmarried woman," Corvus said, addressing the crowd now rather than her. "It does not specify age beyond the minimum requirement. If Seren wishes to take the child's place, the law allows it." Relief swept through the square like wind through wheat. Leora's parents pushed through the crowd, the mother already reaching for her daughter. The girl ran down the steps and into her mother's arms, sobbing. Corvus looked at Seren with cold calculation in his eyes. She was perfect for this, and they both knew it. Mute, orphaned, no family to mourn her beyond one brother, no voice to scream as the dragon came. "Your sacrifice will be remembered," Corvus said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Then, quieter, "meant only for her, though I doubt you'll be missed." Declan had fought his way to the front of the crowd. "You can't do this. She's my sister. She's all I have." "She volunteered," Corvus replied. "Unless you wish to challenge the treaty yourself?" The threat was clear. Challenge the sacrifice, and Declan would be arrested, possibly executed for treason. Seren caught her brother's eyes and shook her head firmly. He had raised her since she was 6 years old, had taught her to read and write when no one else would bother with a mute child. had worked himself nearly to death in the quarries to keep them both fed. She would not let him throw his life away for her. "The ritual will proceed at dawn tomorrow," Corvus announced. "Seren will be escorted to the clifftop altar tonight. May the gods grant her courage." The crowd began to disperse, the relief palpable now that their own daughters and sisters were safe for another year. Only Declan remained, standing at the base of the platform with his hands clenched and his jaw tight. Seren descended the steps and wrapped her arms around him. He held her so tightly she could barely breathe. "I'll find a way," he whispered against her hair. "I'll get you out of this. I swear it." But they both knew there was no way out. The Dragon King came every year at dawn, and every year the sacrifice disappeared. No bodies were ever found. No survivors ever returned. That night, Corvus's soldiers came for her. They weren't cruel about it. One of them, a young man barely older than Declan, looked genuinely sorry as he bound her wrists with silk rope. The bindings were meant to be ceremonial rather than functional, loose enough that she could have slipped free if she tried. They walked through the village in silence. Faces appeared in windows and doorways, watching. No one spoke. No one offered prayers or comfort. At the edge of town, Declan waited. The soldiers allowed him to approach. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "I should have protected you better. After Mother and Father, I promised I would keep you safe, and I failed." Seren shook her head firmly. She reached up with her bound hands and touched his cheek, then pressed her palm over his heart. The gesture said what her voice could not. "You kept me safe. You gave me 16 years I wouldn't have had alone. This is not your failure." "I love you," Declan whispered. "I love you, Seren." She mouthed the words back. "I love you too." The soldiers led her away before she could see him break down completely. The clifftop altar was exactly as the stories described. Ancient stone carved with symbols that predated human memory. It stood on a promontory that jutted out over a sheer drop. Below, the sea crashed against rocks in an endless rhythm. The soldiers secured her to the altar with more silk rope, then retreated quickly. By the time the first light of dawn touched the horizon, Seren was alone. She wasn't afraid. That surprised her. She had expected terror, but instead, there was only a strange calm. Perhaps 16 years of silence had taught her to accept things that could not be changed. Or perhaps she was simply too tired to be afraid anymore. The sun rose slowly, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Then she heard it. A sound like thunder, but rhythmic. The beating of wings massive enough to create their own wind. The dragon appeared from the east, silhouetted against the rising sun. It was larger than anything Seren had imagined, easily the size of the village meeting hall, with wings that blocked out the light. But something was wrong. The dragon's flight was erratic, unsteady. As it drew closer, Seren saw the arrow lodged between the scales of its right shoulder. Not a normal arrow. This one glowed with a sickly green light, and dark smoke rose from the wound. Poison. The dragon tried to land on the clifftop, but its wings failed. It crashed onto the stone with such force that Seren felt the impact through the altar beneath her. Cracks spiderwebbed across the ancient rock. For a moment, nothing moved. Then the dragon began to shimmer. Light rippled across its scales like heat waves rising from sun-baked stone. Its massive form contracted, bones and muscle reshaping into something smaller. Human. The transformation took only seconds. Where the dragon had been, a man now lay sprawled on the stone. He was naked, as tall as any warrior Seren had ever seen, with white skin marked by dark tattoos that seemed to move in the dawn light. His hair was black as midnight and fell to his shoulders. Even collapsed and clearly dying, he was beautiful in a way that seemed almost painful to look at. Blood pooled beneath him. Not red blood like humans had, but something that shimmered gold in the rising sun. The arrow was still lodged in his shoulder, the poison spreading visible black veins across his skin from the wound. His eyes opened. They were the color of molten amber, and they fixed on her with an intensity that stole her breath. "Human," he managed, his voice rough with pain. "Run." Seren looked at the ropes binding her wrists, looked at the dying man before her, looked at the arrow that was killing him. She pulled her hands free. The silk bindings slipped off easily, just as she'd known they would. The soldiers had never expected her to try to escape. Where would she go? The clifftop was isolated, miles from the village. The only way down was a sheer drop to the rocks and sea below. She knelt beside the man and reached for the arrow. "Don't!" he gasped. "Don't touch me. I'll burn you. I burn everyone." She could feel the heat radiating from his skin even without making contact. It should have terrified her. Instead, she placed her hand directly on his shoulder, just above the wound. Nothing happened. No burning, no pain, just warmth, like sunlight on skin. Not the sudden scorch she'd expected. Only a slow, insistent heat that could sink deeper the longer she stayed there. The kind that left its mark after the moment passed. The man's eyes widened in shock. Serene gripped the arrow shaft and pulled. It came free with a wet sound, and more golden blood welled up from the wound. The man made a sound somewhere between a gasp and a groan, but he didn't pull away from her touch. She grabbed herbs from the ceremonial offerings that had been left at the altar. Yarrow for bleeding, comfrey root for poison. Her mother had been a healer before the soldiers killed her. In the 16 years since, Seren had learned everything she could about her mother's craft. It was the only way she had left to honor the woman who had given her life. She crushed the herbs between her palms and pressed them directly into the wound. The man's body tensed, every muscle going rigid. His eyes, those impossible amber eyes, stayed locked on her face. "Who are you?" he whispered. She couldn't answer, could only keep pressure on the wound as the bleeding slowly stopped. The black veins were still spreading from the injury, the poison working its way through his system. He needed more help than she could give here. Real healers. Time. "Soldiers coming," he said suddenly. His head turned toward the path from the village. Seren couldn't hear anything yet, but clearly his senses were sharper than hers. "Corvus's men. They saw me fall. They'll finish what the arrow started." He tried to sit up and nearly collapsed. Serene caught him, her hands on his shoulders. The heat of his skin was nearly unbearable now, but still she didn't burn. Still her flesh didn't blister and char the way his clearly expected it to. "I don't understand," he said. "No one can touch me. Not for decades. Not since the fever took hold. But you..." He looked at her hands on his skin with something like wonder. "You're not burning." Seren heard the soldiers now, boots on stone, voices shouting orders. She looked at the dragon man and made a decision. She pointed to his chest, then to the sky. The gesture was clear. "Change. Fly. Escape." "I can't carry you far," he said. "The poison is already in my blood. But I can reach my lair in the mountains, if you're willing to trust a monster." Seren nodded. He smiled, just a little. Brave girl, or foolish, perhaps both. The shimmer started again. His body expanded, reshaped. Wings erupted from his back. Scales replaced skin. In seconds, the dragon stood before her again, though smaller than before. Weaker. The wound in his shoulder still bled gold. He lowered his head until his massive eyes were level with hers. One of his front legs reached out, the talons carefully curved to avoid hurting her. Seren climbed onto his back and wrapped her arms around his neck. His scales were hot enough that she knew they should have burned her, but they didn't. The soldiers burst onto the clifftop just as the dragon's wings unfurled. Corvus was with them, his face twisted with fury. "Stop them!" he screamed. "Don't let the sacrifice escape." Arrows flew. The dragon lurched into the air, his injured wing nearly failing. They dropped, falling toward the rocks below. Seren's stomach lurched. Then, at the last moment, his wings caught air and they rose. The last thing Seren saw as they flew away was Corvus standing at the edge of the cliff, staring after them with cold rage in his eyes. And Declan, pushing through the soldiers, reaching the altar where only blood remained. Her brother fell to his knees. She tried to call out to him, to tell him she was alive, but no sound came. It never did. The dragon's flight grew more erratic as the poison spread. They barely cleared the mountain peaks before he dove toward a cave entrance carved into the rock face. They crashed inside, tumbling across stone. The dragon's form shimmered and contracted until the man lay on the floor again, unconscious. Golden blood pooled around him. The black veins had spread across his chest now, reaching toward his heart. Seren looked at the dying Dragon King and knew she had very little time. Seren woke to the sound of fire. Not the crackling of wood burning in a hearth, but something alive. Something that breathed and pulsed with a rhythm that matched a heartbeat. She opened her eyes to a ceiling of stone that glowed with veins of crystal, reflecting light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The air was warm, almost uncomfortably so, and smelled of sulfur and something metallic she couldn't identify. The cave was not what she had expected. The entrance had been rough stone, but this chamber was carved and shaped. Tapestries hung on the walls, their colors still vibrant despite obvious age. Shelves carved directly into the rock held books, scrolls, and objects that looked ancient. A massive bed of stone sat against one wall, covered in furs that looked far too luxurious for a monster's lair. And on that bed, the Dragon King was dying. Valen. She didn't know how she knew his name. Perhaps she had heard it in the stories villagers told to frighten children. Perhaps it was simply written in the way he lay there, regal even in fever and pain. His skin was flushed with heat that made the air above him shimmer. Every breath he took was accompanied by small tongues of flame that licked from his lips. The wound in his shoulder had been hastily bandaged with what looked like strips torn from fine cloth, but already the bandages were soaked through with golden blood. The black veins had spread since the cliff top. They covered his entire right side now, creeping across his chest like dark lightning frozen in flesh. Seren pushed herself to her feet and immediately swayed. Her legs felt weak, her head light. How long had she been unconscious? Hours? Days? She made her way to the bed on unsteady legs. The heat intensified as she approached, waves of it that should have driven her back. But just as on the cliff top, her skin didn't burn. The temperature was uncomfortable but bearable. Valen's eyes opened, those amber eyes that seemed to glow with their own internal light. "You're awake," he said, his voice rough. "Good. There's water in the alcove to your right. Food in the cold storage if you can find it. You should leave before—" He stopped, coughing. Smoke rose from his mouth. "Before the fever takes me completely." Seren shook her head firmly. "You can't help me," Valen said. "The poison is magical, designed specifically to kill dragons. Our healers might have been able to purge it, but they're in the city, days away even if I could fly, which I can't." Another cough, more smoke. "Go, save yourself." She pointed to him, then to herself, then made a gesture of wrapping a wound. "You want to try to heal me?" Something that might have been a laugh escaped him, though it turned into another coughing fit. "With what? Herbs and hope?" Seren nodded. "You're either very brave," he said, "or you're running on pure stubbornness." He closed his eyes. "My mother used to say the same thing about me." She explored the cave system quickly. The main chamber opened into several smaller ones. One held what appeared to be storage, crates and barrels carefully sealed. Another held shelves of preserved foods, kept cold by some method she couldn't identify. There was even a natural hot spring in a third chamber, steam rising from water that bubbled up from deep below. But what she needed most, she found in a fourth chamber, a collection of dried herbs, roots, and fungi arranged on wooden racks. Someone had been a healer here once. The collection was old, some of the plants brittle with age, but many were still potent. She recognized yarrow and comfrey root from the cliff top. But there was also wolfsbane, carefully contained, blood moss that only grew in deep caves, moonflower petals that shimmered even dried, and most importantly, a root she had only read about in her mother's old journal. Dragon's Bane Antidote. The poison that killed dragons was called Dragon's Bane, and like most poisons, it had a counter. Rare, difficult to prepare, but possible. Serene gathered what she needed and returned to the main chamber. Valen hadn't moved. The black veins had crept closer to his heart. She found mortar and pestle among the cave's treasures and began to work, crushing, mixing, adding spring water to create a paste. The work was familiar, comforting even. Her hands remembered what her voice could not say. "What are you doing?" Valen asked, watching her through half-closed eyes. She held up the paste, then pointed to his wound. "You found the antidote." He sounded surprised. "Most humans wouldn't even recognize it. Are you a healer?" Seren hesitated, then nodded slowly. Not a trained one, not officially, but her mother had been, and she had taught her daughter everything before the soldiers came. "Apply it," Valen said. "Though I warn you, the fever makes me dangerous. I've burned through 3 sets of furs already. If you touch me for too long..." She placed her hand directly on his chest, right over his heart. The heat was immense, like pressing her palm to a forge. She could feel his heartbeat faster than it should be, could feel the fever burning through him. But her skin didn't blister, didn't char. "Impossible," Valen whispered. "How are you doing that?" Serene had no answer. She removed the soaked bandages and began applying the paste directly to the wound. Valen's entire body went rigid, every muscle tensing. But he didn't pull away, didn't push her hands aside. She worked in silence, spreading the paste thick over the injury, then wrapping it with clean cloth she found in the storage chamber. The process took nearly an hour. By the time she finished, sweat poured down her face, and her hands trembled with exhaustion. But the black veins had stopped spreading. "It's working," Valen said, wonder in his voice. He tried to sit up and nearly collapsed. "Still weak. The poison will take days to fully clear, but it's working." Seren guided him back down to the furs. He let her, which told her exactly how weak he truly was. A dragon king did not take orders from a human girl unless he had no other choice. She found blankets and made herself a place to sleep on the floor nearby. Valen watched her with an expression she couldn't read. "You should take the bed," he said. "I'm too hot to be comfortable anyway." She shook her head and pointed to him firmly. He needed the bed. He was injured. She was fine on the floor. "Stubborn," Valen muttered, but there was something almost like warmth in his voice. The next 3 days fell into a rhythm. Seren changed his bandages every 6 hours, reapplying the antidote paste each time. She found food in the storage chambers and prepared simple meals. She discovered that the hot spring was perfect for washing the blood from cloth and skin. And she watched Valen heal. Slowly at first, almost imperceptibly. The black veins retreated inch by inch. The fever lessened until he could breathe without exhaling flame. His golden blood stopped seeping through the bandages. He watched her too. She could feel his eyes following her as she moved through the cave. Not threatening, just observing. On the second day, he tried to speak to her without words. She felt it as a gentle pressure against her thoughts, like someone knocking on a door that wouldn't open. "I don't understand," he said aloud, frustrated. "I should be able to speak mind to mind with you. But there's nothing, just silence." Seren touched her throat and shook her head. Silence was all she had. "Were you born without a voice?" Valen asked. She shook her head again, then made a cutting gesture across her throat. "Taken. Stolen." His eyes darkened with something that might have been rage. "Someone cut out your tongue?" She nodded. "Who?" She didn't know how to explain. Didn't know how to say that she couldn't remember the face, only the pain. Only her mother's screams and her father's blood, and Declan dragging her away while soldiers burned their house. Valen seemed to understand her silence. "You don't remember, or you can't bear to." Both, she thought. Both. On the third night, exhaustion finally caught up with her. She had been changing his bandages when sleep pulled at her like a tide. She managed to finish the task, but when she tried to stand and return to her makeshift bed on the floor, her legs gave out. She collapsed against the stone bed, her head resting on the furs near Valen's uninjured side. She meant to get up, meant to move back to the floor, but sleep took her too quickly. When she woke, pale dawn light filtered through cracks in the cave entrance. She was still leaning against the bed, and Valen's hand rested on her hair, his fingers tangled gently in the strands. He was asleep, actually asleep. His breathing was deep and even, his face peaceful in a way she hadn't seen since the cliff top. The fever had broken completely. The black veins were barely visible now, faint shadows under his skin rather than the death sentence they had been. Seren looked down at her hands, the ones that had been touching him for 3 days straight. Burns covered her palms, not severe, not enough to cause real damage. They hadn't appeared all at once. The heat had built by degrees, soaking in each time she touched him. But they were clear evidence that she had been burning, slowly, every time she touched him. The pain had been so constant, she had stopped noticing it. She had kept healing him anyway. Valen's eyes opened, those amber eyes that seemed to look straight through her. "You were burning," he said softly. "All this time, you were burning, and you didn't stop." She met his gaze and shrugged slightly. What else could she have done? Let him die? No one has ever... He stopped, swallowed. "For 300 years, I've burned anyone who touched me. A fever that won't break, a curse with no cure. I've been alone because my very presence causes pain. But you..." His fingers tightened slightly in her hair. "You touched me anyway, knowing it hurt, knowing it would keep hurting. You stayed." Seren reached up and gently freed her hair from his grip. She pointed to the bandage on his shoulder, then made a gesture of something rising. "Better. You're better. Because of you." Valen sat up slowly, testing his strength. The wound pulled, but didn't reopen. "You saved my life twice now. Once on the cliff top, and once here." She noticed the mark on her wrist then, the one she had always ignored. A small circular symbol, like a serpent eating its own tail, but with wings. It seemed darker today, more defined. Valen saw her looking at it. His expression changed, became unreadable. "Where did you get that mark?" he asked carefully. Seren shrugged. She had always had it. A birthmark, she assumed. "May I see it closer?" She held out her wrist. Valen took her hand carefully, cradling it as if it were made of glass. His thumb traced the mark, and she felt heat bloom under his touch. "This is the mark of ancients," he said quietly. "Dragon healers from a bloodline that died out 3 centuries ago. They were the only ones who could touch me after the fever started, the only ones immune to dragon fire. When they died, I thought I would spend eternity in isolation." He looked up at her. "But you have their mark, which means you have their blood." Seren stared at the symbol on her wrist. She had never known it meant anything. Had never known her mother's healing gifts came from something more than human skill. "I need to take you to the capital," Valen said. "To the city where the dragon sages live. They can test your blood, confirm what I suspect. And if I'm right..." He stopped. "If I'm right, you're not just a healer. You're the first of your kind in 300 years, and that means..." He didn't finish the sentence, but Seren saw something in his eyes that made her heart beat faster. Hope, and something else. Something that looked almost like longing. "Can you fly?" he asked. "It's 3 days' journey by wing at a steady pace. 2 if we push, and I don't have to rest too often. Longer if I'm still weak. But I can't leave you here alone, and you can't return to your village. Not after Corvus saw you escape." Seren thought of Declan, of her brother who must believe her dead. But Valen was right. If she returned to Arendelle, Corvus would kill her. He had tried once already. She nodded. She could fly. "Then we leave at dawn tomorrow," Valen said. "I'll need 1 more day to regain my strength fully. But after that, I'm taking you to Ethermoor, the city in the clouds." He stood, testing his legs. He was steady now, the poison completely purged. When he looked at her, there was something new in his expression. not just gratitude, something deeper. Thank you, he said softly, for not leaving me to die, for enduring pain to save someone you had every reason to fear. You're remarkable, Seren. She blinked in surprise. She hadn't told him her name. He smiled slightly. You said it in your sleep, just once. It's a beautiful name. Heat flooded her cheeks, and for once it had nothing to do with dragonfire. Valen walked to the cave entrance and looked out at the mountains beyond. Tomorrow, your life changes. Everything you knew about yourself, about what you are, will be different. Are you ready for that? Seren joined him at the entrance. Below, the world spread out in shades of green and gray. Somewhere down there, Declan mourned. Somewhere down there, Corvus plotted. Somewhere down there was the girl she had been. But that girl was gone now. She had died on the clifftop altar. What stood here now was something else, something new. She looked at Valen and nodded. She was ready. The flight to Ethermoor took 2 days. Seren had never imagined the world could look so vast. From the back of a dragon, the forests below were nothing but patches of green. Rivers became silver threads. Mountains she had thought insurmountable were merely wrinkles in the earth's skin. Valen flew steadily, his wings beating in a rhythm that became almost meditative. He had fashioned a harness of sorts from leather and rope, something to help her stay secure during the long flight. Every few hours, he would descend to let her rest, find water, stretch legs that weren't meant to grip dragon scales for hours at a time. He didn't speak much during these stops, just watched her with those amber eyes that seemed to see more than she wanted to reveal. On the second evening, as the sun set in shades of copper and gold, Valen banked sharply upward. They climbed higher than they had flown before, up through layers of cloud until the air grew thin and cold. And then Seren saw it. Ethermoor, an impossible city. White stone towers rose from the clouds themselves, as if the buildings had grown directly from vapor and air. Crystal spires caught the dying light, sending rainbows dancing across structures that seemed to float without support. Bridges arched between towers, delicate as spider silk, but somehow strong enough to hold the figures she could see crossing them. Dragons flew between the buildings, dozens of them in every color imaginable. Silver and gold, deep green and midnight black, crimson and sapphire blue. Some were massive, larger even than Valen. Others were smaller, sleeker, built for speed rather than power. And everywhere, the glow. The city itself seemed to emanate light, soft and warm, turning the clouds around it into a halo of luminescence. Valen felt her awe through her grip on the harness. He made a sound that might have been satisfaction and angled toward the largest structure at the city's heart. A palace that made every other building look small by comparison. All white stone and crystal and silver, with towers that pierced the clouds above and disappeared into mystery. They landed on a platform that jutted from the palace's side. The moment Valen's claws touched stone, guards appeared. Dragons in human form, wearing armor that looked like it had been forged from starlight. They held spears with tips that glowed with inner fire. One of them, a woman with silver hair and eyes like green ice, stepped forward. Her gaze swept over Seren with clear disapproval. "Your Majesty returns," she said. "We received word that you were injured. The healers have been waiting." "I'm healed," Valen replied, shifting to his human form. He kept one hand on Serene's arm as she climbed down from the harness, steadying her. "I require chambers prepared for my guest. The Eastern Tower, the ones with the private library." The guard's eyes narrowed. "Your guest is human." "I'm aware of what she is. Humans are not permitted in Ethermoor without explicit authorization from the council." "Then it's fortunate I am the king," Valen said mildly, "and require no authorization beyond my own word. Prepare the chambers, now." The guard bowed stiffly and gestured to the others. They melted away into the palace, leaving only one young male guard who looked at Seren with open curiosity rather than hostility. Valen guided her through corridors that seemed carved from light itself. The walls were smooth white stone that glowed softly, illuminating their path. Windows opened onto views of the city below and the sky above. She saw dragons in human form walking past, all of them beautiful in that same painful way Valen was. All of them with eyes that held that otherworldly, luminous quality. And all of them stared at her. Whispers followed in their wake. Serene didn't need to hear the words to understand the tone. Shock, disapproval, confusion. The chambers Valen led her to were more luxurious than anything she had ever seen. The main room held a bed large enough for 5 people, covered in silk the color of storm clouds. Windows took up an entire wall, offering a view of the city that stole her breath. And in the corner, exactly as Valen had specified, a small library with shelves of books reaching from floor to ceiling. "You'll be safe here," Valen said. "The guards will ensure no one disturbs you. I need to meet with my council and explain your presence. It won't be a pleasant conversation." Seren touched his arm and made a gesture. "Grateful. Thank you. You saved my life," he replied. "Offering you a place to sleep is the least I can do." He paused at the door. "Don't leave these chambers without an escort. Not everyone in Ethermore is as welcoming as I am." After he left, Seren explored. The chambers had a bathing room with a pool fed by hot springs, the water steaming gently. Fresh clothes had been laid out on the bed, clearly meant for her. Dragon-made garments in shades of gray and white, soft as water against her skin. She bathed and changed, then gravitated to the library. The books were ancient. Some were written in languages she recognized from her mother's journal. Others used symbols and characters she had never seen. She ran her fingers along the spines, feeling the weight of knowledge stored here. One book caught her attention, smaller than the others, bound in leather that had been dyed a deep blue. The title was written in common tongue, which surprised her. Most dragon texts weren't. "Bloodlines of the Ancients," she read silently. She opened it carefully. The pages were thin as butterfly wings and covered in cramped handwriting, diagrams of family trees, names that meant nothing to her, until she found the symbol. There, on a page near the back, the same circular mark that adorned her wrist, a serpent eating its own tail, but with wings spread. Beneath it, text that had been partially damaged by water or time. She could only make out fragments. "Last of the healer line. Died 3 centuries past. None survived. Ability to touch dragon flame. Immune to..." The rest was illegible, the ink too faded to read. Serene found parchment and a charcoal stick among the writing supplies on the desk. She carefully copied the symbol and what text she could read, folded the parchment, and tucked it into the pocket of her new clothes. A knock at the door startled her. She quickly returned the book to its shelf. A servant entered, a dragon in human form with copper hair and kind eyes. She carried a tray of food, bread that smelled of honey, fruit Serene didn't recognize, meat cooked rare, almost raw, the way she had learned dragons preferred it. "His Majesty thought you might be hungry," the servant said softly. She set the tray on a table near the window. "I'm Issa. If you need anything, pull this cord." She indicated a braided rope hanging near the bed. "Someone will come." Seren nodded her thanks. Issa hesitated at the door. "Is it true you healed the king? That you touched him without burning?" Another nod. "Then you're either blessed by the old gods or cursed by new ones." Issa's expression was impossible to read. "I'm not sure which would be worse in this city." She left before Seren could respond. Not that she could have, even if she wanted to. The food was better than anything Seren had eaten in her life. She ate slowly, watching the city through the window as twilight fell and lights began to appear in the towers. Not torches or lanterns, but something else. Magic, perhaps. Or simply how dragons lived. She was finishing the meal when Valen returned. He looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with physical exhaustion. "The council is not pleased," he said without preamble. "They want you removed from the city immediately. Sent back to the human lands with an escort and a warning never to return." Serene's heart sank. Of course, she was human, an intruder in a place she had no right to be. "I told them no," Valen continued. He crossed to the window and stood beside her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his skin. I told them you saved my life, that you possess abilities we thought extinct, that you deserve our protection, not our suspicion. He turned to face her. In the growing darkness, his eyes seemed to glow. I've ordered Theon, my chief advisor, to conduct a thorough investigation into your bloodline, your abilities, everything we can learn about why you can touch me without burning. It will take time, which means you'll be staying in Ethermoor for the foreseeable future. Seren wanted to ask what that meant. Wanted to know if she was a guest or a prisoner, but she had no voice for questions. Valen seemed to read her uncertainty anyway. You're not a captive. You're free to explore the palace, though I'd recommend keeping an escort. Some of my people can be territorial about outsiders, and there's one in particular you should be wary of. As if summoned by his words, there was another knock at the door. This time, a woman entered without waiting for permission. She was beautiful in the way all dragons were, with hair like spun gold and eyes the color of fresh blood. She wore a gown that looked like liquid silver poured over her body and moved with the confidence of someone who had never been told no. Valen, she purred. I heard you brought home a pet. I had to see for myself. Lady Morrigan, Valen said, his tone cooling several degrees. I don't recall inviting you to these chambers. No need for formality. We've known each other far too long for that. Morrigan's gaze slid to Seren, assessing. So this is the human who saved you? How quaint. Serene met her stare without flinching. She's under my protection, Valen said. That means she's to be treated with respect, by everyone. Of course, my king. Morrigan's smile didn't reach her eyes, though I must wonder what the council will think. A human living in the palace, given chambers that many noble dragons would kill for. Some might say you're showing favoritism. Some might even say you've grown attached. What I do and why I do it is not subject to approval, Valen replied. Was there something you needed, Morrigan? Or did you simply come to satisfy your curiosity? I came to remind you that the Autumn Court gathers in 3 days, Morrigan said. Every eligible noble in 5 kingdoms will be there, all hoping to catch the eye of the king who has remained unbonded for 3 centuries. You really should attend, unless you plan to spend your evening entertaining your new human companion instead. The emphasis on those last words made them sound like an insult. Valen stepped between Morrigan and Seren, a subtle but clear gesture of protection. I'll attend court as I always do. What I do with my private time is not your concern. Everything you do is my concern, Morrigan replied. When you finally choose a queen, it will change the balance of power in every kingdom. Surely you don't intend to leave us waiting forever. My bonding will happen when and if I find my true mate, Valen said flatly. Not a moment sooner, no matter how impatient the noble houses become. Morrigan's eyes flashed dangerously, but she managed a smile and a shallow curtsy. Of course, my king. I'll leave you to your guest. She swept from the room, but the hostility lingered like smoke after fire. Seren looked at Valen questioningly. He ran a hand through his hair, suddenly looking older than he had moments before. Morrigan is the most powerful unmated dragon in the city, he explained. She's wanted to be queen for decades. The fact that I've remained unbonded has kept that dream alive for her and several others. Your presence here threatens that. If I'm showing interest in a human, it suggests I have no intention of bonding with dragon nobility. But you're not showing interest in me, Seren wanted to say. You're just helping me. Valen looked at her, really looked at her, with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. Aren't I? He said softly. The air between them suddenly felt charged, heavy with something Seren couldn't name. Valen stepped closer, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. You're the first person who's touched me in 300 years, he said. The first person whose presence doesn't cause me pain. Do you understand what that means to someone who's been alone as long as I have? Serene's breath caught. She couldn't look away from his eyes, couldn't step back even though every instinct screamed at her to maintain distance. Valen reached up slowly, giving her time to move away if she wanted. His fingers brushed her cheek, feather light and burning hot. "I should not want this," he whispered. "I should not want you. The consequences of bonding with someone who isn't my true mate would be catastrophic. But when you look at me like that, I find myself forgetting consequences." His thumb traced her lower lip. Serene's heart hammered so hard she was certain he could hear it. He leaned closer, so close she could feel his breath against her skin. So close that if she rose on her toes, their lips would meet. Then Valen pulled back sharply, as if she had burned him instead of the other way around. "No," he said, more to himself than to her. "No, I can't. Not until we're certain. Not until Theon confirms what you are. If I bond with you and you're not my true mate, the price—" He turned away, putting distance between them. "The price is something neither of us could bear." Serene's hands trembled. She formed a question with them, gesturing. "Why? What happens?" Valen found paper and ink on the desk. He wrote quickly, his handwriting sharp and angular. "If a dragon bonds with someone who is not their true mate, both parties are bound together for life. But there's no love in it, no connection, only obligation and growing resentment. The dragon loses the ability to ever find their true mate, and the human slowly loses themselves, consumed by the bond until nothing remains but a shell. It's a fate worse than death." Serene read the words twice, understood what he was saying. "We cannot risk this until we know for certain." She nodded, even though her body ached with the loss of his touch. 3 days, Valen said. "Theon's investigation should be complete by then. We'll know what you are, what we are to each other. Until then—" He moved back to the door. "Until then, I should stay away, for both our sakes." He left without another word. Serene stood at the window long after he was gone, watching the city lights and wondering what would happen if Theon's investigation proved she wasn't Valen's true mate. Wondering if she could survive the disappointment. Below in the palace, Theon received reports from his network of spies. General Corvus of Arendelle was recruiting an army, telling anyone who would listen that dragons had murdered an innocent girl, that the peace treaty was broken. That war was the only answer. And Declan, the dead girl's brother, had vanished. No one knew where he had gone. Theon carried these reports to Valen's private study, knowing the news would not be welcome. The human girl had brought more than just healing to Ethermore. She had brought a reckoning that was already taking shape in the world below. The nightmares started on the 3rd night in Ethermore. Serene woke gasping silently, her body drenched in sweat, and her heart racing so hard it hurt. The images from the dream clung to her mind like cobwebs she couldn't shake free. Blood, screaming. Her mother's face twisted in terror. She pressed her hands to her temples, trying to force the memories back down where they belonged. Buried, forgotten, safe in the dark where they couldn't hurt her. But they kept coming. She saw her mother kneeling in their small cottage, saw the soldiers surrounding her, their faces hidden behind helms, saw the knife flash in lamplight, her mother's blood spreading across the wooden floor in a pool that seemed to grow and grow until it filled the world, and then the hands grabbing her. Young Serene, only 6 years old, screaming for her mother, screaming until someone pressed her down, held her jaw open, and the knife came for her too. The pain was white-hot and endless. The taste of her own blood choking her, her voice dying in wet gurgles as they stole it from her throat. Serene clutched at her neck, feeling for wounds that had healed 16 years ago. Her breathing came in short, panicked gasps. The room spun. The door to her chambers burst open. Valen stood there, still dressed despite the late hour. His eyes found her immediately, and whatever he saw in her face made him cross the room in 3 long strides. "Serene." His voice was gentle. "You're safe. You're here." It was a dream. She shook her head violently. Not a dream, a memory. One she had successfully hidden from herself for 16 years, suddenly clawing its way to the surface. "May I?" Valen gestured to the bed. She nodded, not trusting herself to do anything else. He sat beside her and reached for her hand. The heat of his skin was grounding, real, something to focus on that wasn't blood and screaming. "I felt your terror," he said quietly, "through the bond that's forming between us. It's still weak, still incomplete, but strong enough that your pain woke me from across the palace." His thumb traced circles against her palm. "What did you see?" Serene's free hand trembled as she reached for the parchment and charcoal on the bedside table. She drew quickly, frantically. A cottage, soldiers, a woman on the ground, a knife. Valen's expression darkened as he watched the images take shape. She drew herself next, small, held down, the knife at her throat. "They murdered your mother," Valen said, his voice tight with controlled rage. "And they cut out your tongue to silence you." Seren nodded. Tears streamed down her face now, hot and unstoppable. She hadn't cried for her parents in years, hadn't let herself. But the memories had broken something open inside her, and now everything poured out. She drew more, her father, falling, protecting, and Declan, just a boy himself, dragging her away from the burning house. "How old were you?" Valen asked. She held up 6 fingers. "And your brother?" 9 fingers. "He raised you alone." It wasn't a question. A 9-year-old child raising a 6-year-old who had just lost her voice. "How did you survive?" Seren wiped her eyes and drew the healer's symbol, the one from her wrist, the one she had copied from the book in the library. "Your mother was a healer," Valen said. "Like you." She nodded and drew more. Her mother with nobles, with soldiers, a bag of coins, an X through the coins. "Your mother discovered something," Valen said slowly, reading her drawings like a language. "Someone was stealing, taking money that belonged elsewhere." "Yes." Seren tapped the drawing of soldiers emphatically, then drew a crown. "Authority, leadership. The military leader of your village," Valen said. "Corvus." She nodded so hard her neck ached. Valen was quiet for a long moment, his hand still holding hers. Then he stood and moved to the door, opening it to speak to the guard outside. "Summon Theon. Immediately. I don't care what time it is." The guard hurried away. Valen returned to sit beside Seren, and they waited in silence, broken only by her occasional shuddering breath as the memories continued to surface. Fragments, pieces, her father's laugh, her mother teaching her about herbs, Declan holding her while she bled and couldn't scream. Theon arrived within minutes, still fastening his formal jacket. He was older than Valen, with silver threading through his dark hair and eyes that missed nothing. "Your Majesty," he said, then saw Seren's tear-stained face. "Is the girl hurt?" "She remembered something," Valen said. "Something that was taken from her 16 years ago." He explained what Seren had drawn, the story told in crude sketches and desperate gestures. Theon's expression grew grimmer with each detail. "I need you to investigate," Valen said when he finished. "Everything about Seren's family, her mother's death, General Corvus, all of it. I've already begun investigating her bloodline, as you requested," Theon said. "But this is different. This is her history, not her ancestry." "Then investigate both," Valen ordered. "Use every resource at your disposal. I want to know what happened 16 years ago in Arendelle, and I want to know why it happened." Theon bowed. "It will be done. Though if Corvus is involved, approaching this will require delicacy. He has considerable influence in the human territories." "I don't care about his influence," Valen said flatly. "I care about the truth." After Theon left, Valen stayed with Seren until dawn broke over the city. He didn't speak much, just held her hand and let his presence be enough. When sunlight finally streamed through the windows, turning the clouds outside to gold, Seren felt steady enough to stand. She went to the bathing chamber and washed the tears and sweat from her skin, changed into fresh clothes, braided her hair with hands that only shook a little. When she emerged, Valen was still there, standing at the window. "Theon is thorough," he said without turning. "If there's truth to be found, he'll find it, but it may take time." Seren joined him at the window. Below, the city was waking, dragons taking flight from their towers, servants moving through the streets in human form. She pulled the folded parchment from her pocket, the one with the copied symbol and fragments of text from the library book. She had almost forgotten about it in the chaos of the nightmare. She handed it to Valen. He unfolded it and studied the symbol, then the text. His eyes widened. "Where did you get this?" She pointed toward the library in her chambers. "You found this here?" He read the fragments again. Last of the healer line. Died 3 centuries past. Ability to touch dragon flame. He looked up at her. "Seren, this is exactly what Theon needs for his investigation into your ancestry. This proves the connection between your mark and the ancient healers. May I give this to him?" She nodded. Valen carefully refolded the parchment. "This changes things. If we can prove definitively that you're descended from the ancient bloodline, it explains why you can touch me, why my fire doesn't burn you. And it means—" He stopped. "It means there's a possibility you're my true mate. Not just someone immune to my fever, but the one person the universe intended for me." The weight of those words settled over them both. 2 days passed before Theon returned with his findings. 2 days of Seren exploring the palace with guards as escorts. 2 days of nobles staring at her with curiosity and hostility in equal measure. 2 days of not seeing Valen, who had apparently locked himself in council meetings that lasted from dawn until well past midnight. When Theon finally requested an audience with them both, Seren's stomach twisted with nervousness. They met in Valen's private study, a room lined with books and maps. Theon laid out documents on the massive desk, his expression grave. "I'll start with what you asked me to investigate first," he said, looking at Valen. "The girl's ancestry. The symbol she found in the library, combined with her mark and her ability to touch your majesty without burning, confirms it beyond doubt. She is descended from the ancient healer line, the last of them, as far as we can determine. Her mother was likely unaware of the full extent of her heritage, but the bloodline ran true in her and passed to her daughter." Seren's hands clenched in her lap. So it was real. The mark meant something. She was something. "The second matter is more complicated," Theon continued, "and more dangerous. I sent agents into Arendelle undercover. They questioned villagers, searched records, bribed officials. What they discovered—" He paused. "General Corvus has been in power for 18 years. He seized control shortly after the previous village leader died in what was ruled an accident. Since then, he has systematically diverted resources meant as tribute to the dragon territories. Weapons, food, gold. He's been stockpiling it all, using the Dragon Peace Treaty as cover while building his own power base. And Seren's mother discovered this," Valen said. "She did. 16 years ago, she was the most respected healer in the region. She tended to Corvus himself after a training injury and saw documents she shouldn't have, evidence of the theft. She confronted him privately, thinking he would see reason. Instead, he had her and her husband killed. He mutilated the daughter to ensure she could never speak of what she might have seen. And he used the murders to consolidate his power, claiming they were killed by bandits and positioning himself as the protector the village needed." Rage filled Valen's eyes, hot enough that Seren could feel the temperature in the room rise. "The son, Declan," Theon said. "He survived because he was at a neighbor's house when the attack happened. He returned to find his parents dead and his sister bleeding. He's raised her ever since, but he never learned the full truth. He was too young to understand the politics, and no one told him." "Where is Declan now?" Valen asked. "That's where the situation becomes urgent," Theon said grimly. "My agents report that Corvus has put out word he's searching for the brother of the sacrificed girl. He's telling people that Declan may have information about dragon movements. But we believe the real reason is simpler. Declan is the last loose end. With both siblings dead, no one remains who could threaten Corvus's version of events." Seren stood so abruptly, her chair fell backward. She gestured frantically. "Declan. Danger. Save him." "I agree," Valen said. He looked at Theon. Can we extract him? I've already positioned agents near Arendelle, Theon replied. On your word, they can retrieve him and bring him here, though it must be done carefully. If Corvus realizes we're protecting the siblings he tried to silence, he'll know we're aware of his crimes. I don't care what Corvus knows, Vaylin said. Bring Declan here. Tonight. Do whatever is necessary to ensure his safety. Theon bowed and left to arrange it. Valen turned to Seren. Your brother will be here by morning, safe, protected. I give you my word. She wanted to thank him, but gratitude seemed insufficient. Instead, she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him, pressing her face against his chest. Vaylin went very still. Then, carefully, his arms came around her. His heat enveloped her, fierce and comforting at the same time. I won't let anything happen to him, Vaylin said quietly. Or to you. They stood like that for a long moment. Then Vaylin gently disentangled himself, though his hands lingered on her shoulders. There's more you need to know, he said. Theon's agents discovered something else. Corvus has been purchasing weapons specifically designed to kill dragons, poison-tipped arrows, enchanted blades, and he's recruiting an army under the pretense of defending against dragon aggression. My sources suggest he plans to attack Ethermoor within 2 weeks. Seren's eyes widened in horror. I can't move against him preemptively, Vaylin explained. The peace treaty forbids it. If I attack human territories without clear provocation, I break the treaty myself and give every human kingdom justification to declare war on dragonkind. I need proof of his intentions, or a witness who can testify to his crimes. Seren pulled away and moved to the desk, found parchment, and wrote in the neat script Declan had taught her all those years ago. I am a witness. I will testify. Let me confront him. Vaylin read her words and shook his head. Too dangerous. He tried to kill you once. He'll try again. Then let him try, she wrote, and fail. In front of his own people, show them who he really is. You're asking me to use you as bait. I'm asking you to let me have justice for my mother, my father, for 16 years of silence. Valen stared at her words for a long time. Then he looked up at her face, reading the determination there. If we do this, we do it my way, he said, with plans and backup and every precaution. You don't move without protection. You don't take risks I haven't approved. Agreed? Serene nodded and wrote one more line. Agreed. But we do it before he hurts anyone else. Dawn was breaking when Theon returned, accompanied by a young man with dark hair and familiar eyes. He was dirty from travel and breathing hard, as if he had been running. Declan saw Seren and stopped dead. Seren, he whispered. You're alive. You're real. I thought everyone said. She ran to him. They collided in the middle of the room, holding each other so tightly neither could breathe. Declan was crying openly, and Seren's own tears soaked into his travel-worn shirt. I thought I lost you, Declan said into her hair. I thought the dragon killed you. I wanted to die too. She pulled back and touched his face, his shoulders, his hands, making sure he was real, making sure he was whole. Declan's eyes found Vaylin, who stood watching from near the desk. You saved her. The Dragon King saved my sister. She saved me first, Vaylin replied. The debt is mine. Declan looked between them, clearly trying to understand. Seren took his hand and led him to the desk, where her most recent message still lay. I am a witness. I will testify. He read it, then looked at her in confusion. Testify to what? So they told him. Everything. About their mother discovering Corvus's crimes, about the murders and the mutilation, about Corvus's current plans for war. With each revelation, Declan's expression grew harder. By the end, his hands were clenched into fists. He killed them, Declan said flatly. Corvus killed our parents, and I've been living in the same village as him for 16 years, never knowing. He looked at his sister. You want to confront him? To make him pay? Serene nodded. Then I'm with you, Declan said. Whatever you need, whatever it takes. Vaylin watched them both with something that might have been respect. Then we start planning. Because in 2 weeks, General Corvus is going to learn that silencing a child does not silence the truth, and that some debts must always be paid. 3 days after Declan's arrival, Theon burst into the council chamber where Valen was reviewing defense strategies with his generals. "Your Majesty," Theon said, breathing hard, "we have a problem. My agents in Arendelle report that Corvus has announced a public execution 3 days from now. The girl Leora." Valen's head snapped up. "The child Seren saved?" "The same. Corvus is calling her a collaborator. Says she conspired with dragons to fake her own sacrifice. He's using her as an example to terrify the population into supporting his war." Seren and Declan, who had been studying maps in the corner, both stood. Seren's face had gone pale. "It's a trap," one of the generals said. "Corvus knows the girl means something to your human guests. He's baiting you." "I don't care if it's a trap," Declan said. "We can't let him kill a child." Seren was already moving toward the door. Valen caught her arm. "Stop," he said. "Think. Rushing in without a plan is exactly what Corvus wants." She pulled a piece of parchment from her pocket and thrust it at him. She had written it earlier, prepared for this exact argument. "Leora will die because of me. I took her place. I saved her once. I will not abandon her now, with or without your help." "You'll die," Valen said flatly. "Corvus has an army. You have a brother and determination. That's not a fair fight." "Then make it fair," Declan said. "Send dragons with us. Create the fair fight." "I can't send an army into human territory without breaking the treaty," Valen replied. "The moment dragon soldiers appear in Arendelle, every human kingdom will see it as an invasion. It will start the war Corvus wants." Seren wrote quickly. "Then send no army. Just you. Follow from distance. Intervene only if necessary. Let me try to reach the people first." Valen read her words and shook his head. "You're asking me to watch you walk into danger and do nothing." "I'm asking you to trust me," she wrote. "I survived 16 years in that village. I know its people. I know how to reach them." They stared at each other, neither willing to back down. Finally, Valen spoke to Theon without breaking eye contact with Seren. "Prepare 2 disguises. Human clothes. Nothing that marks them as connected to Ethermoor. And ready my guard. Small numbers, fast flyers. They follow, but stay out of sight until my signal." "Your Majesty, I must advise against this," Theon said. "Your advice is noted and ignored," Valen replied. He finally looked away from Seren to address Declan. "You'll protect your sister. With my life," Declan said. "See that you do. Because if anything happens to her, I will hold you personally responsible." The threat should have been ridiculous. A dragon king threatening a human quarry worker. But Declan nodded seriously, understanding the weight behind the words. They left at dawn the next day. Seren and Declan wore rough-spun clothes and traveled cloaks that hid their faces. They rode in a merchant's wagon Theon had arranged, hidden among crates of grain. Above them, invisible in the clouds, Valen and 6 of his best warriors flew. Close enough to reach Arendelle quickly if needed, far enough that human eyes wouldn't spot them. The journey took 2 days. They arrived in Arendelle as the sun set on the second evening, the town square already being prepared for the execution. A scaffold stood in the center, freshly built. The noose hung ready. Seren felt sick. They found shelter in the ruins of their old house. It had been rebuilt partially over the years, turned into storage for the quarry. But the back room where they had slept as children was still intact. Declan lit a small fire and they ate bread and cheese in silence. Outside, they could hear the village preparing, hammers on wood, voices discussing the execution with a mixture of fear and anticipation. "I hate this place," Declan said quietly. "I've always hated it. But I stayed because I thought you needed stability, a home. Now I wonder if I was just a coward." Serene touched his shoulder and shook her head. He hadn't been a coward. He had been a child trying to save his sister. That took more courage than leaving ever could have. "Tomorrow," Declan said, "when we walk into that square, There's a good chance we don't walk back out. You know that, right? She nodded. She had known from the moment Theon brought the news. I just want you to know, Declan continued, that raising you has been the greatest thing I've ever done. You turned out better than I had any right to hope for. Braver, kinder, stronger. I'm proud to be your brother. Seren leaned against him, and they sat together watching the fire burn low. In the distance, thunder rumbled, or perhaps it was the beating of dragon wings circling in the darkness. The next morning dawned gray and cold. Rain threatened in heavy clouds that pressed down on the village. The entire population seemed to have gathered in the square. Corvus stood on a platform near the scaffold, surrounded by soldiers. He wore full military regalia, every bit the hero protecting his people. And on the scaffold, small and terrified, stood Leora. Her hands were bound. Her copper hair hung limp around her face. Even from a distance, Seren could see she had been crying. "Citizens of Arendelle," Corvus called out. His voice carried across the square. "We gather today to deliver justice. This girl conspired with the dragon that attacked our village. She helped the sacrifice escape, betraying every one of us. The treaty was broken not by us, but by those who serve monsters. Lies. All of it lies. But the crowd murmured agreement. They wanted someone to blame, someone to punish." Seren and Declan stood at the edge of the square, their hoods still raised. Declan carried the scroll in his jacket, the one detailing everything they had learned. Serene's heart hammered against her ribs. "For the crime of conspiracy and treason," Corvus continued, "Leora will hang at noon. Let this be a lesson to anyone who thinks to betray their own kind for dragon favor." Leora sobbed. Her parents were somewhere in the crowd, held back by soldiers. Their screams for mercy went unheard. Seren stepped forward. Declan matched her, step for step. They walked through the crowd. People moved aside, confused by the two cloaked figures approaching the platform. Corvus didn't notice until they were nearly at the scaffold. Seren reached up and pulled back her hood. The square erupted in chaos. "She's alive!" someone shouted. "The sacrifice lives!" "Impossible!" someone else cried. "The dragon took her! She should be dead!" Seren walked to the center of the square, directly in front of Corvus's platform. Every eye was on her now. She gestured to Leora, then to herself. The message was clear. "You took her to replace me, but I'm here now. Let her go." Corvus's face twisted with rage. "Seize them both, the girl and whoever brought her back." Soldiers moved forward, but Declan stepped beside his sister and unrolled the scroll he carried. His voice rang out, clear and strong. 16 years ago, General Corvus murdered our mother and father. He did this because our mother discovered he was stealing tribute meant for the dragon territories, stealing weapons, stealing gold, building his own power while blaming dragons for our suffering. He cut out my sister's tongue to silence her. And now he plans to murder a child to hide his crimes. "Lies," Corvus snarled. "Arrest them." But the soldiers hesitated. The crowd was muttering now, uncertainty spreading. Everyone had known Seren's parents. Everyone remembered their deaths. And everyone knew that Corvus had come to power shortly after. "Prove it," someone in the crowd called. "Where's your proof?" Declan pulled out the documents Theon's agents had stolen from Corvus's office. Records of diverted shipments, weapons purchases, gold hidden in secret accounts. He held them high. "This is proof. Years of theft, years of lies. He's been preparing for war not to protect us, but to seize more power. And he's willing to kill children to keep his secrets." Corvus drew a weapon, not a sword. A spear with a tip that glowed sickly green. The same poison that had nearly killed Valen. "I will not be challenged by dead men and mute girls," Corvus said. He leaped from the platform with practiced grace and drove the spear toward Seren's chest. She tried to move, tried to dodge, but the attack was too fast, too sudden. The spear punched through her shoulder, just below her collarbone. Pain exploded through her body, white-hot and all-consuming. She felt the poison entering her bloodstream, burning like acid through her veins. She fell to her knees. The world tilted and blurred. Declan screamed and threw himself at Corvus, but soldiers grabbed him, held him back. The sky went dark, not clouds, wings. Valen landed in the square in his dragon form, so massive that buildings trembled. His roar shook the air itself, and every person in the square fell back in terror. Corvus raised his spear, aiming for the dragon's throat, and Serene's birthmark ignited. The circular symbol on her wrist blazed golden, so bright it was painful to look at directly. Power erupted from her core, instinctive and wild. She didn't know how to control it, didn't know what she was doing. She only knew that she was dying, and Valen was in danger, and something deep inside her refused to accept either. The healing power that had been dormant for 22 years exploded outward. She felt the poison in her shoulder burn away, consumed by golden light. Felt the wound close itself, flesh and muscle knitting together in seconds. Felt strength return to her limbs. And beyond her own body, she felt Valen. Felt the residual poison that had lingered in his system since the cliff top, too small to detect but still there. Still slowly weakening him. She reached for it through the bond forming between them and tore it out, purged it completely. Valen's form shimmered. He shifted to human, landing on his feet directly in front of Corvus. His skin glowed with the same golden light as Serene's mark. "She's a dragon," someone in the crowd whispered. "The girl is dragonborn. The last of the ancient bloodline," someone else said, awe in their voice. "The healers who died 300 years ago." Corvus stared at Serene, at the light still emanating from her mark, and finally understood. She wasn't just a girl he had failed to silence. She was something far more dangerous. Proof that dragon and human blood could mix. Proof that the old lines weren't as dead as history claimed. His soldiers were already backing away from him. Several had dropped their weapons. "He tried to kill her," one soldier said. "He tried to murder someone with dragon blood. That's a death sentence under the old laws." "Arrest him," another soldier ordered. "General Corvus, you're under arrest for murder, theft, and attempted murder of dragonkind." Corvus tried to fight, tried to run, but his own men turned on him, tackling him to the ground and binding his hands. Serene's vision was dimming. The power surge had taken everything she had, more than she had. She swayed and felt herself falling. Valen caught her before she hit the ground. He was warm and solid and real, and she tried to tell him that Leora needed help, that the girl was still on the scaffold, but her body wouldn't respond. "I have her," Valen said. She realized with shock that she could hear him, not out loud, in her mind. Faint and distant, but unmistakable. "Stay with me, Serene. Stay." That single word echoed through her consciousness as darkness claimed her. Stay. She woke briefly during the flight back to Ethermore. She was cradled against Valen's chest in his human form, held by a dragon guard who flew with careful precision. Below, she could see the mountains passing. "Leora?" she tried to ask, but no sound came. It never did. "Safe," Valen's voice answered in her mind. "Declan stayed to care for her. He'll bring her to Ethermore when she's ready. You saved her. You saved them all." She wanted to stay awake, wanted to ask if Corvus was truly caught, if the village was safe, if this was real or another fever dream. But exhaustion pulled her under again, and she surrendered to it. The last thing she felt was Valen's arms tightening around her and his voice in her mind, clearer now. "Hold on. Please. I'm not ready to lose you. Not now. Not when I've finally found you." Then there was only darkness and the distant sound of wings beating against wind, carrying her home. Serene floated in darkness for what felt like forever. Sometimes she surfaced enough to be aware of things. Voices speaking in low tones, the softness of silk beneath her, heat pressed against her palm, constant and grounding, and a presence in her mind, faint like distant starlight, but always there, always watching, always waiting. "Come back," the presence whispered. "Please come back." She tried, but her body was so heavy and the darkness was so deep. On what she later learned was the third day, she became aware of conversation nearby. The power drain was catastrophic. An unfamiliar voice, old and raspy. She manifested abilities that should have required years of training, healing herself, purging poison from another, all while her body was shutting down from the spear wound. It's a miracle she survived at all. Will she wake? That was Valen. His voice rough with exhaustion and something that sounded like fear. Eventually. Her bloodline is strong. The ancient healers were nearly immortal in their prime. But she's never been trained, never learned to control the power. It nearly consumed her completely. How do I help her? You already are. The bond between you is feeding her strength. Without it, she would have died days ago. Keep doing what you're doing, Your Majesty. Hold her hand. Let her feel you through the connection. It's the only anchor keeping her tethered to this world. Seren wanted to tell them she could hear, wanted to squeeze Valen's hand and let him know she was fighting her way back. But her body wouldn't obey. The darkness pulled her under again. On the fourth day, she heard Declan. Is she going to die? Her brother's voice was tight with the same fear she had heard when their parents were killed. Tell me the truth. She's stronger than she looks. Valen again. He sounded like he hadn't slept in days. She survived losing her voice. Survived 16 years in a village that saw her as broken. Survived confronting the man who murdered her parents. She's not going to surrender to something as simple as exhaustion. You care about her. It wasn't a question. Silence. Then, I've lived for 3 centuries. I've seen empires rise and fall. I've watched generations of humans live and die, and in all that time, I've never met anyone like your sister. She saved me twice. Once from poison, once from loneliness I didn't even realize I was drowning in. So yes, I care about her. If she wakes up, Declan said carefully. What happens? She's human. You're the Dragon King. That's not an easy path. She's not entirely human anymore. The power awakening in her is changing things. But you're right that it won't be easy. The nobility already resents her presence. They'll resent it more if I choose her as my mate. But I stopped caring about easy centuries ago. Declan was quiet for a moment. My sister can't speak, can't defend herself with words when people attack her. You'll need to be her voice sometimes. She won't need me to be her voice, Valen replied. She has her own. It's just not the kind most people are used to hearing. And anyone who can't understand that isn't worth her time anyway. Serene felt warmth bloom in her chest that had nothing to do with fever. On the 6th night, she finally found her way back. Her eyes opened to soft light and a ceiling she recognized. The chambers in Ethermoor? Her chambers. She was in the massive bed, surrounded by silk and furs and the lingering scent of smoke. And beside the bed, slumped in a chair with his head resting on his arms near her hand, Valen slept. He looked terrible. Dark circles under his eyes. His normally immaculate appearance disheveled. His hand wrapped around hers even in sleep. Seren tried to move and managed to turn her head slightly. The motion sent pain lancing through her shoulder where the spear had pierced her. The wound was healed, but the memory of it remained. She squeezed Valen's hand weakly. His eyes snapped open immediately. For a moment, he just stared at her as if she might be a dream. Then his free hand came up to touch her face, gentle as breath. You're awake. His voice cracked. You're actually awake. She tried to smile, managed something that probably looked more like a grimace. Don't try to move yet, Valen said quickly. You've been unconscious for 6 days. The healers said your body needs time to recover fully. He reached for a glass of water and helped her drink. The cool liquid felt like heaven against her dry throat. She heard a whisper in her mind then, faint and distant, but unmistakable. Can you hear me? She managed to nod slightly. Relief flooded Valen's expression. The bond is strengthening. When you collapsed, I could barely feel you. Now, he paused. Now I can sense you're confused, tired, in pain but alive. Can you speak back? Through the bond? Seren tried, pushed thoughts toward that distant presence in her mind. But nothing happened. She shook her head. That's all right, Valen said. The bond won't be complete until we... He stopped, a flush creeping up his neck. Until we choose to complete it, physically, which we obviously don't need to discuss while you're barely conscious and recovering from nearly dying. Despite everything, Seren felt warmth flood her own cheeks. Over the next 3 days, her strength returned gradually. She could sit up without feeling dizzy, could walk to the bathing chamber and back without needing to rest, could eat solid food and keep it down. Declan visited daily, bringing news from Arendelle. Corvus had been tried by a council of human leaders and found guilty of murder, theft, and conspiracy. He would spend the rest of his life in prison. The village had elected a new leader, a former merchant known for his fairness. And Leora was recovering, surrounded by family who would never let her out of their sight again. She wants to thank you, Declan said on the 3rd day. Leora. She's written you letters, about a dozen of them. I think she's too scared to deliver them herself, afraid of the dragons. Seren took the letters and read them later. Childish handwriting thanking her over and over. Drawings of flowers and birds. A carefully copied poem about heroes. Seren kept everyone. On the 4th day after waking, Valen came to her chambers in the evening. He carried parchment and ink. The healers say you're recovered enough for this conversation, he said, setting the supplies on the table. And we need to talk about what happens next. Seren sat across from him, her hands folded in her lap. You manifested ancient healer abilities, Valen said. That's not something that can be hidden or ignored. The entire Dragon Council knows. Every noble in Ethermore knows. And through them, every Dragon Kingdom will know soon. You're not just a girl with interesting ancestry anymore. You're the living proof that the ancient bloodline survived. He wrote as he spoke, making sure she could follow. The council has been pressuring me for 3 centuries to choose a mate, to produce an heir. But dragon kings can only have children with their true mate. Not just anyone they find attractive or politically advantageous. It has to be the one person fate intended for them. He looked up at her. I believe you're my true mate, Seren. The fact that you can touch me without burning, that our bond is forming, that I can feel your emotions even when you're unconscious. All of it points to the same conclusion. Seren's heart hammered. She reached for the parchment and wrote carefully. How do we know for certain? We complete the bond, Valen said quietly. Physically. If you're truly my mate, the bond will solidify completely. We'll be able to communicate mind to mind without barriers. We'll feel each other's emotions clearly. And you'll be able to carry my child. If you're not my mate, he swallowed hard. If you're not, the bond will break. We'll both survive, but we'll never be able to form that connection with our true mates. It's a permanent choice. And if I am your mate, she wrote, then you'll be the queen of dragons, my equal in every way, bound to me for as long as we both live, which, given your bloodline, could be a very long time. Centuries, maybe. The ancient healers were nearly immortal. Seren stared at the words she had written. Then she wrote more. I don't know how to be a queen. I don't know politics or diplomacy. I can't even speak out loud to defend myself. How can I possibly lead? Valen reached across the table and took her hand. You led a village to turn against a corrupt leader by showing them the truth. You saved a child despite knowing it would put you in danger. You healed me when you had every reason to let me die. You've already proven you can lead. The rest is just details we'll figure out together. She wrote again, her hand shaking slightly. What if I'm not your true mate? What if we try and fail? Then we'll deal with that if it happens, Valen said. But Seren, I've waited 3 centuries for this. For you. I'm not going to walk away from the possibility out of fear. The only question that matters is what you want. Do you want this? Do you want me? Seren looked at him, really looked at him. This man who had carried her to safety when she was meant to be a sacrifice, who had held her hand for 6 days while she floated in darkness. who had listened when she had no voice and heard her anyway. She wrote 3 words, "I choose you." Valen's eyes blazed golden. "Are you certain?" She nodded. He stood and moved around the table, lifted her to her feet with careful hands. His touch was warm, almost hot, but it didn't burn. It never burned. "This will complete the bond," he said softly. "There's no going back after. You'll be tied to me forever." Seren reached up and placed her palm against his cheek. The gesture said everything her voice could not. "I understand. I accept. I want this." Valen's control shattered. He kissed her with an intensity that stole her breath, and she felt the bond between them ignite. They moved to the bed, and what happened there was tender and fierce and overwhelming all at once. Seren felt the moment the bond completed, like a door in her mind swinging wide open. Suddenly, Valen's presence wasn't distant and faint. It was right there, vivid and clear and consuming. "Can you hear me now?" His voice in her mind was as clear as if he had spoken aloud. "Yes." The thought formed easily, naturally. "I can hear you. You have no idea how beautiful your voice is." He pulled her closer. "Even if it's only in my mind. I love you," she thought at him. "I think I've loved you since you looked at me on that cliff top like I was something precious instead of something broken." "You were never broken." His arms tightened around her. "You were just waiting for someone who could see you clearly." They lay tangled together as the bond settled fully into place. Seren could feel his emotions now. His relief that she was alive. His joy that the bond had worked. His hope for a future he had stopped believing in centuries ago. And underneath it all, love, deep and fierce and unshakable. "I waited 3 centuries, he murmured against her hair. 300 years of isolation and loneliness. It was worth every second if it led me to you." 3 weeks later, Seren stood in the throne room of Ethermore's palace, wearing a gown that seemed to be made of moonlight and starshine. Her hair had been braided with silver thread and diamonds. The mark on her wrist had been painted with gold leaf, turning it into a declaration rather than something to hide. The throne room was packed with dragons in human form, nobles from every kingdom, advisors and generals. And in the front row, Declan in formal clothes that looked uncomfortable on him, and Leora with her parents, the girl clutching a bouquet of flowers. Valen stood beside Seren, magnificent in robes of midnight blue trimmed with silver. He had insisted she stand with him rather than kneel before him. "Equals," he had said. "Always equals." The coronation ceremony was conducted in both dragon speech and common tongue, so all could understand. Seren was proclaimed queen, mate to the Dragon King, and heir to the ancient healer bloodline. First human to be recognized as dragon nobility in recorded history. When the crown was placed on her head, delicate silver shaped like wings, she felt the weight of it physically and symbolically. This was real. This was permanent. There was no going back to the silent girl who had expected to die on a clifftop altar. "Any who contest this union, speak now," the officiating elder said. Silence. Even Lady Morrigan, standing near the back, said nothing. She simply inclined her head in acknowledgement of the inevitable. "Then let it be known," the elder continued. "Seren of the ancient line is recognized as queen, mate, and equal to King Valen. May their union bring prosperity to all kingdoms." The throne room erupted in formal applause. Not enthusiastic, perhaps, but respectful, accepting. Afterward, there was a feast that lasted until dawn. Ambassadors from 5 human kingdoms presented gifts and pledges of continued peace. Declan was formally named ambassador between human and dragon territories, a position he accepted with grave seriousness. And Leora, brave despite her fear, approached Seren and handed her the bouquet with trembling hands. "Thank you," the girl whispered, "for saving me, both times." Seren knelt so they were eye level and pulled the girl into a gentle hug. Leora clung to her for a long moment before her parents ushered her away. "You're good with children," Valen observed, appearing at Seren's side. "I had to be," she thought at him through their bond. "Declan was barely more than a child himself when he raised me." I learned by watching him struggle through it. Good, Valen said. A smile played at his lips. Because we're going to need that experience sooner than expected. Seren frowned. What do you mean? He took her hand and placed it on her own stomach. She felt warmth bloom under her palm, felt something new and fragile and impossibly precious. The healers confirmed it yesterday, Valen said aloud so others could hear. The queen carries an heir, the first dragon child born to the ancient bloodline in 3 centuries. Serene's eyes went wide. Pregnant. She was pregnant. Already. Apparently, true mates are extremely fertile, Valen murmured, his voice full of smug satisfaction. The healers say you're about 3 weeks along, which means it happened on our first night together. Seren wanted to be shocked, wanted to feel overwhelmed. Instead, she felt only joy. 5 months later, she stood in the palace library teaching a group of young dragons about healing techniques. Her pregnancy was visible now, her stomach round with the child growing inside. She wore simple clothes and kept her hair in a practical braid. The crown sat on a shelf nearby, donned only for formal occasions. The young dragons watched her with fascination as she demonstrated how to prepare a poultice using only gestures and written instructions on a board. She had discovered she could use magic to make her writing appear in the air, glowing golden letters that everyone could read easily. Valen watched from the doorway, unnoticed by the students. His hand rested on his own stomach, mirroring hers. Through their bond, she felt his contentment, his pride, his love. Your Majesty, one of the young dragons said, is it true you couldn't always do magic? Seren nodded and wrote in the air, I didn't know I had magic until I was 22. It was buried deep, hidden by trauma and fear. But it was always there, waiting for me to be ready. How did you know you were ready? Another student asked. Seren thought about that, about the cliff top and the cave, and the moment she had chosen to heal instead of flee. I stopped being afraid of who I might become, she wrote, and started accepting who I already was. The students pondered that. Then one brave young girl raised her hand. Can you teach us that? How to not be afraid? I can try, Seren wrote, smiling. After the lesson ended and the students had filed out, Valen approached. You're good at this, he said. Teaching. They listen to you in a way they never listen to the other instructors. Because I don't have a voice to intimidate them with, she thought at him. They have to actually pay attention to understand me. It forces them to be present. Still, you've found your purpose here. Beyond being queen, you're rebuilding knowledge that was lost for centuries. The ancient healing arts. Future generations will study what you teach. Seren leaned into him, and his arms came around her carefully, mindful of her stomach. Are you happy? Valen asked, both aloud and through the bond. She didn't answer with words. Instead, she sent him everything she was feeling. The joy of teaching, the excitement of the child growing inside her, the satisfaction of having found her place in a world that had tried to silence her, the deep, bone-level contentment of being loved and loving in return. Yes, she finally thought at him. I'm happy. That evening, they stood together on the highest balcony of the palace, watching the sun set over the city in the clouds. Seren's hand rested on her stomach where their child grew. Valen's hand covered hers. Below them, Ethermoor glowed with evening light. Dragons flew between towers. Humans and dragons worked side by side in the streets, the old barriers slowly crumbling. Declan was down there somewhere, meeting with ambassadors. Leora was visiting with her family, no longer afraid of the dragons she had once been taught to fear. The world was changing. Slowly, imperfectly, but undeniably changing. Do you ever regret it? Valen asked quietly. Agreeing to be bound to me? Taking on all of this? Serene turned to face him, placed her hand over his heart, and felt it beat steady and strong. Through their bond, she sent him the memory of their first meeting. Her on the altar, him crashing broken and bleeding onto stone. The moment she had reached out and touched him despite every reason not to. I chose you before I even understood what choosing meant, she thought at him. And I would choose you again, every time, in every life. Valen pulled her close, careful of her pregnant belly, and pressed his forehead to hers. My mate, he whispered. My queen, my miracle. They stood together as twilight fell, and stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Two souls that had found each other against impossible odds. A dragon king who had burned alone for centuries, and a mute girl who had learned that silence could be its own kind of power. And between them, growing stronger every day,